Hello and welcome to Tracy Momi Reads. I'm back again with another video. Today I'm going to be talking about the book The God of Endings. The God of Endings by Jacqueline Holland. The God of Endings. Phew. This book, I want to say that it was I don't know if it was like a Prime member, like that. I think I've talked about this before, where if you are a Prime member, you get all these benefits in addition to the shipping, the TV streaming stuff. You get music and you get books. Like you get, there's a library of books you can choose from. Then also you get a free book every month. And I don't know if this was one of those or if it was something I saw on BookBub. I'm plugged into so many notifications, so many things about books. It's hard to remember. But I will tell you the thing that made me gravitate to this book and to like go ahead and pick it up was the fact that it had to do with an immortal and a vampire. Right. So, I don't know. I'm sure I've talked about this before. I mean, that's how I was sucked into the Twilight vortex, because I have a thing for vampire lore. Like, one of my favorite movies is Interview with the Vampire with Brad Pitt and Tom Cruise. And yes, I have seen the TV series adaptation, which I think is phenomenal as well. Yeah, so I've just always kind of been into like that kind of stuff, or, like vampires or whatever. Now, I will admit, I haven't read a whole lot of, books about vampires. I've seen a lot of movies, but I have not like read a whole lot of books. The Twilight series, that was the last time I did a series of books where you were kind of anticipating one coming out and, you were reading them all and seeing the movies. I don't know that I'm going to get that sucked in again to something like that, because I know that there are currently books in the marketplace that are pretty popular that feature vampires, but I had enough with the sparkly ones that Stephanie Meyer created. So now it would have to be standalone books or books that have a different premise, because the whole teen and the high school vampire and the human girl, yeah, over that, definitely not going back down that road. So yeah, anyway, back to the book. I will tell you right off the gate, this book reminded me of The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, who we all know Addie was an immortal, right? She wasn't a vampire, but she was an immortal being or soul or whatever. And this book, like, we get this backstory of this little girl. And you know what else it reminded me? Wait a minute. Sorry, that cut off my thought. I was thinking about Fledgling by Octavia Butler, which that book was really good. I had a problem with the fact that the main character, because she had been turned as a child, that she may have been like 100 years old, but she presented as like a minor, and like all the stuff that she was doing and going through that, that was weird. But through most of the vampire lore, just like in Interview with the Vampire, it has been my understanding of the way that works is that you remain in the form that you are. Like, so if you are turned as a child, you stay a child, even if you're like 100 years old. If you are, thin, you stay thin, like, or whatever age. And that was something that was different in this particular book. There was some age progression happening, which, scratching my head. But like I said, Stephanie Meyer had vampires sparkling in the sun, and most of the time when they go out in the sun, they die. So I guess, number one, it's fiction, and each author builds their worlds a little different, right? And I don't know if we ever get a clear explanation as to why the main character was able to have that age progression, but it did stop at a certain point. I will tell you that. It's not like, she became an old woman. The only reason why I bring all this up as we go back to the beginning here is because it happened to her that she was turned when she was a child. So, all this time into the future, now we're dealing with this whole adult woman. It was interesting. Okay, so in the book, her name is Colette, right? And she was changed back in the 1830s. And her name was Anna or Anya, when she was turned back in the 1830s, right? It was like during that time when, back then, if somebody got sick, they didn't understand, especially if you're like out, in some rural area where there wasn't a lot of technology or different things happening to advance civilization. If you like were still out in the woods, so to speak, I don't think that they really understood how anything really worked, right? They were very ignorant about a lot of things, especially medical things and health things. And if somebody got sick, and it could have been like a common cold, they didn't understand spread. Like, you sneeze on somebody, of course they're going to get sick. Now you got a whole village of people that are sick. And they were thinking that the villages were cursed. Okay. It was given very much Salem witch trials and a lot of, stuff, because if somebody didn't get sick, then it's like they were the person cursing the person. So many people started dying that they would like dig up graves to cut off people's limbs because they were thinking that they were reaching from the grave and poisoning everybody. It was just like a lot of literally backwoods thinking and ridiculous thought processes that they were going through in her village at the time. And her mother, father, and brother had all succumbed to illnesses that today they probably could have took some medicine, and lived through it. Back then, it just, everything would wipe you out because there was nothing to help you get over it. And then it was just, you were living in a situation where everybody had it. So you're just constantly spreading stuff back and forth. But Anna didn't die. She got really, really sick. And they were going to kill her. Yeah, they were going to kill this kid. I want to say she was 10 or 11. But she had a guardian that stepped in. And this person was married to her grandmother, her mom's mom. And her dad had made some kind of comment to her about him being different or strange, this man. And she, talked about what she remembered of him, before he came to get her or whatever, and everything that she described, I'm like, oh, that's like Vlad the Impaler. That's like Dracula, like pale, long fingers, like he was from another time or whatever. And her dad, before he died, had written a letter to this guy saying, hey, I'm sick, I'm dying, I want you to look after my kids, if you could come and get them. So by the time the guy got there, like I said, Anna was the only person alive. Her dad and her brother had died. And so he took her, much to the town's protest. And I'm thinking, y'all were going to get rid of her anyway. Like, let this man take her and let her become his problem, since y'all think she's infecting the whole town. So he takes her to live with, him and the grandmother. And the grandmother really didn't have a role. We really didn't hear much from her. But she had to know what was going on with her husband or whatever. So the way that it worked in their world, you got bit, but you died, which I think that happens with most of it. But they had a funeral for her so that everybody could see that, she was sick already, so she died. And they buried her. And, her step-grandfather, whoever he was, he went and dug her up. But because you're dead, you can't be seen, right? So he kept her like in this boarded up barn or whatever, and would bring her little animals and stuff to feed off of, because now like she is bloodlust. She needs blood to survive, and that's how she knew something was different about her. Still didn't really have a name. I don't think that she knew that she was a vampire, like what it was. She just knew she needed this blood. And then he eventually had to send her away so that she could be around other people like her, and then she could learn some survival skills and that whole lifestyle. So that is the backstory we get. but there's like a parallel thing because it's present day and in the past. In present day, and I read like some people's comments about this, they were wondering why the author chose to do this. Present day, it's 1984. So I don't know why the author chose that. It wasn't even anything significant about that decade in the book. You know what I mean? That I can even think back on, like, oh, because she wanted to show Reagan was president, or she wanted to do the, like, I don't know why that was the year she chose. But anyway, present day is 1984, and Anna is now Colette, that's her name, and she runs like a Montessori type school for like pre-K kindergarten kids. And because she spent a lot of time in France, like she's very fluent in French, like that's where she primarily grew up and lived, as she, as we get all these back and forth past and present stories. So the thing about the Montessori school that she runs, she also teaches the kids French because she's, speaks it fluently. That's like basically her first language. But the school is actually in a historic home, the home where her step grandfather first took her when she was a kid. She owns that house now. He's still around, but he lives in California somewhere. And I can't remember. It's somewhere like in the United States, but like rural countryside, because there's like her neighbors have a dairy farm. So maybe it's in Wisconsin. Oh, that's cheese. But milk would have to be involved, right? But I feel like it's somewhere like that. So the main piece of this story is seeing, we get all this stuff where like how she got through those years and survived to come up to where we are now. So that is why I was really getting Addie LaRue vibes, because I mean, she was around when like doing the Nazi Germany thing where, the soldiers started invading France, and she was around for some other historical things that the author actually mentions like in the book. And I've said this before, like how I love when authors do that. Like they take a fiction story, but they weave in some like actual historical elements that make you go like, was that person really there? Like it's a suspension of belief, and you kind of get caught up in the story. And that's how it was. She did come across it was like two brothers, like when she first, went, when her grandfather first sent her away. Well, first there was this part about her being on this boat. That was a long, drawn out thing, but I still was interesting, like, because think about it, like, for her to have been in America and had to go to France, there was only one way for her to get there, and it was on a boat that took weeks. So it was a lot of people that didn't make it on the journey. A lot of stuff happened on that boat. But then when she got there, she went to live with this older woman and these two boys, and one of them was a vampire like her. And the other one, I don't know, it was something about him where he was human, but he had this ability to kind of like foresee the future, and it was very I'm trying to think what the word is. It was almost mystical, like he had some kind of mystical powers, because he could tell when things were about to happen and when things were going to come to an end. And there was a God that kept speaking through him or kept giving him visions, and that God was called the God of Endings, which is where the title of the story comes from. So you get all caught up in like the past, and you're so fascinated with what's going on with that story. And then we'll jump to the future. And in the future, the big thing that's going on, there's a young boy who, he has some kind of illness. It presents like it's asthma, but I think it's some respiratory stuff that's a lot more serious than, his parents even know of. And they're going through, divorce. His mom's kind of wackadoodle, she lost another kid, and Colette is in present day starting to kind of become a surrogate mother for this child. Because think about it, I mean, she never got married. She had, like, with some of the backstories, she had a couple of loves in her life, but They were human. They were, at risk. She never thought to turn anybody or never did anything like that. So she had loss in her life. And there was even a time where she got close to a young girl that, something happened to her. So this boy, present day, after she's been alive for 300 years, no, I guess 130 years or so, 150. I'm doing the math wrong. 1830 to 1984. It's like 150. And maybe that's why the author did that, because she wanted an even number for her age. I don't know. But in the present day, this boy, that's, he's like a kindergartner. So he's like 5 or 6 or whatever. And she's, becoming very attached to him. And so much is going on in his life. And she's having to advocate for him. And the mom is, like I said, she's going through it. And then the mom and the stepdad are getting a divorce. So she ends up watching him sometimes. And, like I said, getting very attached. But hold up. What is crazy is that the boy that she had grown up with, who had the visions and knew about the God of endings, he had started to talk to her in her dreams that there was going to be an ending coming, and she didn't know like what it meant, but it was starting to activate her hunger, because she could suppress her hunger. Like she had learned how to she only drank from animals, much like the Cullens. She was a vegetarian. She didn't kill people, but she had learned to like drink from animals without killing them. And I won't tell y'all like what her food supply was, but that whole thing was weird to me. But anyway, as her hunger got deeper and deeper, she would like go out on these benders and come back and not know what the hell she had done. Like, had she, slaughtered people, or because she would be all bloody and muddy and stuff. And then we kind of learned what's going on with that. But I think for me, the historical aspect of it, the world building that the author did in a way of how they chose to present their immortal and their vampire, and how they survived and lived or whatever. I found all that to be fascinating, right? And even during the parts of the book where, they're spending a lot of time talking about Colette and this little boy and his family, whatever. I'm like, what is happening here? Because I will tell you, like I said, she was getting these visions and her hunger started. There was times when she thought like she had to stay away from the kids, because she's like, I'm gonna go in there and massacre all those little kids, because I'm getting hungrier and hungrier, and this animal blood, it's not enough of it, So that's what I'm thinking. Oh my gosh, she finna kill these kids. What's about to happen? So then when it kind of gets to the end, there's this thing that happens with this little boy's mom. I mean, one could argue that anywhere that little boy was placed or went would have been better than where he was, right? But at the same time, I don't know how I feel about the liberties that Colette took, and how she very much thought she was saving him and that this was the only option. And the whole story with the title and everything, it really, at the end of the day, I think it more spoke to another ending of a life that Colette had been living, right? Because she, lived as a child and a fledgling, right? And then she was a nomad, and then she met this man, and she became an artist and a lover. And then she, went on to go to France and met another girl, and they became best friends, and she bought a house, and she became an independent woman. She's had all these versions of her life, and with every new version of ourselves, right? I mean, there has to be an ending of the old one. So, she became something else when she decided that she was going to help this little boy out. So there was an ending of that life of being a teacher and having that school. She had to let it go so that she could move into this next phase of her life. And whether or not that's what the boy was trying to tell her from the grave, I don't know, or if that's just what she interpreted it. But I really enjoyed every aspect of the book. But that ending just got me because, I don't know, I think about, you know, I keep talking about the Twilight thing, but, you know, Rosalie, one of the Cullen, you know, Hale, you know, siblings in that book, she never wanted to become a vampire. You know, she had something very horrible happen to her, and Carlisle thought he was, you know, hey, I'm trying to help you out. Like, you know, give you a new lease on life, new powers, new vitality. You stay young and beautiful forever. But that's not what she wanted, because she wanted a family and she wanted to be married. And, you know, as far as a family, she wanted to have kids. That was like the biggest dream of her life. She wanted to be a mother. And once she became a vampire, that dream was taken away and it was impossible. And not to mention, you know, even though you live 100 years, you still have that trauma of what happened to you before you got turned. So she never wanted that for herself. So, you know, it was one of the selfish decisions that he made. And I feel like Colette made a similar decision. So that's all I'm going to say about that. But overall, it was a good read. Very different from some of the books that I had been reading. Very well written, very in a vein of literary fiction, actually. So let's not mistake, you know, just because I may be drawing some parallels because the Twilight books have vampires in them, this book was on a whole nother level. Okay. It wasn't, you know, like a YA cheesy romance. This book was on another level about this woman going through life, trying to figure out not only who she is as a woman in a society that really shit on women a lot of times, but then you're also like a vampire and an immortal and, you know, all of this stuff. So if you like books that have historical references, books that have vampire lore, books that have past and present tense, and that just, you know, you have to kind of elevate your mind when reading them, then, you know, something you can sink your teeth in. I think that you would really enjoy The God of Endings. I will tell you that by way of action, you know, outside of like some stuff that happens with the Nazi soldiers, you know, with Colette having to show them, you know, who's really in charge. Outside of that, it's not a lot of action, not a lot of blood and gore, not a lot of vampire type stuff even going on. You know, it's always brought to our attention through Colette's actions, as far as her feeding and then, you know, learning about her past. But she didn't even really come in contact with a whole lot of people like her. So just keep that in mind. It's more just a story of this woman's life who happens to be a vampire immortal. You know what I mean? So anyway, if any of that sounds like, you know, it's something you're interested in, I would say go check it out. If you have read The God of Endings, I would love to know your thoughts in the comments. What did you think about that ending? What did you think about it? Let me know. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure that you like this video and go ahead and take the opportunity to subscribe to my channel if you have not done so already. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you again next week. Bye.